Hi, everybody. You're listening to a special bonus episode of Comics and History. I wasn't originally planning on recording an episode to be released on New Year's Day, but then I read issue number 2 of DC's The Doomsday Clock when it came out on Wednesday, December 27th. And after reading this issue, and doing some other online reading, it got me thinking about the creation of the DC universe, going back well beyond the post-crisis or pre-Flashpoint eras. And since Doomsday Clock is so recent a release, I need to apply a very strong spoiler warning to this episode. If you are reading Doomsday Clock and you have not read issue number 2 yet, I beseech you to please stop listening to this episode now and then come back to it after you have finished reading issue number 2. Okay, just wanted to put in a quick pause there for those who wanted to hit the pause or stop buttons. Again, my mandate here on Comics and History, with the exception of my review of current Canadian comics, is to look at comic characters and storylines from prior decades. But what's going on with Doomsday Clock, at least from what I've read in issue number 2, could have pretty massive ramifications for the history of the DC universe. I will say that what I'm presenting here is not entirely original. When I first had my eureka moment on Wednesday night, I was thinking, oh, am I the first to come up with this? And then I went online and I saw that, no, there have been people who have been thinking along similar lines since DC Rebirth number 1 was released all the way back in May of, was it 2015? Oh, I'll say it was 2015 or 2016. You'll forgive me, folks. I'm getting old. The years, they all start to blend together at a certain point. But I was also reading an article which was posted on Newsarama, and putting together my thoughts with different thoughts that I've seen posted on various blogs and message boards. I've come up with what I think is a pretty interesting theory behind the creation of the DC universe. And this is all from within a fictional setting, of course. The real world history of the DC's creation is that it started out as National Comics. National Comics had sister company or sister companies, and over time all of those properties were put together into one shared universe, which came to be known as the DC Comics universe. And then over the decades, DC has bought up characters and whole lines from other now long defunct companies. So here it is. In Doomsday Clock number 2, and again, major spoilers for Doomsday Clock number 2, Ozymandias, the new Rorschach, the Mime, and the Marionette all cross an interdimensional barrier, and they enter the DC universe, which is currently in its rebirth or post-rebirth phase. And Ozymandias comments to the new Rorschach that they have traveled to the universe which John Osterman, aka Dr. Manhattan, traveled to after he departed their universe at the conclusion of the original Watchmen series. And Ozymandias reflects that Osterman/Manhattan may very well be posing as an individual within this universe. And so they said about trying to find Dr. Manhattan because they're going to need him to help sort out the mess that's going on their Earth. So after I read issue 2 of Doomsday Clock, I said, And then I was just on Facebook and I came across this article which suggested that maybe Dr. Manhattan has been posing as a character within the DC universe. And the author of that article suggested that Dr. Manhattan has been posing as Captain Atom, which makes sense actually because Dr. Manhattan was based on the character of Captain Atom, originally a Charlton Comics character, but a character who was eventually folded into the DC universe at around the time of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then in the post-crisis era, Captain Atom was given the whole post-crisis origin revision treatment and made a prominent member for a period of time in the post-crisis DCU. And so that got me thinking, did Dr. Manhattan create the DC universe? Now, based on what we've seen so far over the last year and change in DC Comics, is that Dr. Manhattan created the New 52 reality. There's pretty strong evidence to suggest that he took 10 years of time away from the DC universe, and in the process he weakened all the heroes because he took away 10 key years in everyone's lives. So he took away marriages, relationships, he took away certain experiences which made the heroes that much stronger. He altered the way that characters first met and interacted with each other. But after reading Doomsday Clock number 2 and reading this Newsram article, it makes me think that Dr. Manhattan has actually been involved with the DC universe for much longer than that. Certainly one could say that Dr. Manhattan has been posing as Captain Atom since 1986, but I'd say that it goes all the way back to the creation of the DC universe. So here's my theory. At the end of Watchmen, in the 12th issue, we see Dr. Manhattan depart Earth, and he starts fiddling with some cosmic stuff. And at the time, readers were given the impression that he was working on creating some new life. And one might think, well, maybe he was creating a new little planet, starting out with something small. But my belief is that that cosmic stuff that he was playing with at the end of Watchmen was actually the building blocks of the entire DC universe. So my belief is that Dr. Manhattan created the DC universe, and in its original form, it was a single universe, but then the rogue scientist, Krona, went against what his fellow Owens were warning him about, and he set out to find or discover the exact origin of the universe. And so he brought his findings to his peers. They said, look at this. You can see on the screen there's this big hand that's coming up through the swirling eddy of cosmic material, and it's forming the Earth. And then, of course, it all goes to pot, because the Owens were right to warn against looking back to the beginning of the universe, as Kronos' actions resulted in evil being unleashed upon the universe. It resulted in the universe being reborn old, and then, as Crisis on Infinite Earths would explain, it also resulted in this single universe being splintered into an infinite number of universes, aka the pre-crisis multiverse. And interesting to note that this story, which was originally told in Green Lantern Volume 2, issue number 40, shows a giant blue hand coming through the swirling eddy. And it makes you think, Dr. Manhattan, blue skin, blue hands, could be him. So going forward with my theory, Dr. Manhattan, prior to Kronos' involvement, and even after, didn't insert himself in his own universe. He took on a level of godhood, one could say, and so he was this invisible presence, just looking out over all of his creation. Certainly jives with a number of established religions across the world today. So what makes Dr. Manhattan enter the DC universe and pose as Captain Atom? Because I think that there's a lot of merit to what that author wrote about in that Newsarama article. So, for decades, Dr. Manhattan just watches everything which is going on. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happens, and he continues to observe things. And the crisis happens, it concludes. At that point, Dr. Manhattan decides that he is going to enter the universe which he has created, perhaps so that he can keep a better eye on what's going on by not having so much of a bird's eye view, but actually interacting with other people who he created and have now been forever altered by the effects of the crisis. And so he looks into the history of this universe he has created, and he sees that there's one Captain Nathaniel Atom. And in this post-crisis reality, Captain Nathaniel Atom has been rewritten as a military man who has been imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, but in exchange for a pardon and a chance to resume his life with his family, Nathaniel Atom agrees to take part in a nuclear fission test in 1968. The experiment takes place, and Nathaniel Atom is considered dead as a result of this experiment. Everybody sees that his body has been completely disintegrated, much like the incident in which John Osterman was transformed into Dr. Manhattan. And so Manhattan decides to enter the DC universe. He decides to place himself in 1986, just after the crisis, and he takes on the identity of Captain Nathaniel Atom, but he also takes on the identity of Captain Atom. And so his explanation is that Nathaniel Atom did not die, rather he was shot forward 18 years in time and reassembled as this atomic powered being who able to change between human appearance and a silver metallic skinned individual who wields these great powers. Now, of course, the original thinking in 1986 was that Nathaniel Atom is a man out of time, but my theory is that what happened was the real Nathaniel Atom apparently died, and Dr. Manhattan stepped in and took his identity and also assumed